You're listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with dietitian Rachel Doyle about how stress and other lifestyle challenges can affect your gut health. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, a registered dietitian, nutrition business coach, and online entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in online business. And I'm here to show you everything I've learned about creating a life and a business that nourishes you. On this podcast, we'll talk about the lifestyle habits, practical strategies, mindset shifts, and leaps of faith required to build a healthy body, a powerful mind, a strong spirit, and a successful business. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, and we have a great interview for you today with one of my Nutrition Business Accelerator alumni students, Rachel Doyle. Rachel is a registered dietitian that helps people overcome digestive issues with the healing power of food and functional nutrition. She works with clients individually and in group programs in her virtual private practice, RAD Nutrition. With a master's degree in nutrition and additional training in integrative and functional nutrition, Rachel uses gut health principles, the mind-body connection, and functional lab testing to help clients find their root cause and regain control of their gut health. We went into a lot of really interesting topics today. Rachel was very gracious to let me go down some rabbit trails, so I hope that our conversation today will help expose you to some new ideas about how to improve your gut health, so that way you can start to get improvements right away and really be looking at all of the different lifestyle choices that might be affecting your gut health beyond just your diet. So I'm super pumped to have Rachel on the show with us today, and without further ado, here is Rachel Doyle. All right, everybody. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Rachel Doyle. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast, Rachel.
Thanks so much, Laura. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And I know that we have a lot to cover today about digestion, which is one of your main areas of expertise and focuses in your business. So I would love to hear your story, and just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better, what drove your passion for helping people with digestive challenges?
Yeah, so a lot of it stemmed from my own personal health challenges. So some of that my health issues kind of really revved up before and then during grad school, which I think was thanks in big part to stress. And I was dealing with fatigue, migraines, low blood sugar, iron deficiency, eczema, and then digestive issues like loose stools. And at the time, I had no idea that all these things could be related to gut health. And it turns out that they all definitely can be and were. And then my first introduction to functional medicine happened when I personally went to see a naturopathic doctor to address some of these health concerns that I was having. And I really loved learning more about the functional lab testing and just how intricately connected everything in our bodies are. And after becoming a dietitian, I did some further training in functional lab testing so that I could incorporate that into my practice as well. And the test that was a real game changer for me personally, and then also for so many of my clients, was the GI map stool test. And it allowed me to take a look at what was going on in my gut and then use targeted supplements and nutrition and lifestyle changes to correct some imbalances and finally start feeling better. And my husband also struggled with acid reflux and debilitating abdominal pains that landed him in the ER on multiple occasions. And so we went through some challenging times with that, and I was able to help him using functional nutrition and lifestyle changes and some of the testing too, to help him start feeling better. And that really deepened my passion for helping other people dealing with similar issues.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming when you were in grad school, that was for nutrition at that time?
It was, yes.
I always
Yeah.
find it so interesting, and I'm not here to like bash dietetics programs because obviously I'm a dietitian and I obviously went to dietetic school, so it's not like I think it's like a bad thing to do. But I always just think it's really interesting because there's so many conditions that people deal with that were never really taught in the dietetics programs that there's any, significant influence of food and lifestyle and supplements and that kind of thing. And so you do kind of have to get into the functional medicine space to actually start learning that stuff. And I know different programs are different, so I'm not going to like make a sweeping generalization that every single nutrition program out there doesn't talk about this stuff. But I did find that when I was in grad school for nutrition, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't mentioned as being related to nutrition. And I think we focus so much on some of the more obvious diseases of nutrition, like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, that kind of thing, that things like you mentioned eczema and stuff, like I don't know if I remember talking about eczema as being related to food choices, right? So, and certainly we didn't talk about how to heal the gut. It was more about like managing symptoms when it came to things like IBS. So, I wondered, did you feel like when you discovered this stuff, how did you feel knowing that you hadn't necessarily learned it as a dietitian in training?
Yeah. I think I kind of felt maybe a little bit of like imposter syndrome almost, or kind of like, why don't I know this? Why didn't I learn
Mm,
that? But I definitely also was just fascinated to learn more. And so kept kind of like doing my own research as I was learning more. And yeah, it's fascinating to see how many things are connected to our gut health and how much what we eat just can affect all those things too.
yeah. Well, what's really cool, I think, is just the amount of opportunities there are to learn this stuff nowadays. Because I know when I was in grad school, most of what I was learning was like self-study, literal like research paper, working for Chris Kresser, that kind of thing. And it seems like now there's so many opportunities to learn functional medicine testing and protocols and that kind of stuff for RDs that want to learn more and want to have that depth of knowledge that a lot of times we don't really get in our schooling because we're just going super broad and like trying to cover as many different things as possible without that level of depth that can necessarily help people that are having those kind of gut issues.
Yeah, totally. I know. So it's great that that's out there. I did a program called Leveraging Labs with Kaylee, who's another dietitian, and that I learned a lot. And then I did your MBA program too, which helped expand my knowledge more. And so, yeah, just learning from other great dietitians who have kind of paved the way in functional nutrition has been really helpful.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there. I was just kind of thinking about how, like, gosh, that must be really frustrating. I don't know if I had that experience necessarily because I was like one of those weirdos that had been exposed to a lot of stuff before I even went into my dietetics program. But I can only imagine it would be frustrating to think like, I'm supposed to be a medical professional that like knows how to help people. And I'm having all of these issues and I don't even know what to do about it. And I think that's just where functional medicine can really help, even if it's just for yourself, but let alone now you can apply it to other people. So as you and I know, and a lot of our listeners know, one of the main features of functional medicine is helping people get to the root cause of why they're experiencing their symptoms. So what are some of the most common root causes that you're seeing in your clients, especially with things like bloating and acid reflux, which I know you specialize in?
Yeah, so I'll go through a few of the main ones that I see the most often. The first one would be low stomach acid. So, and also along with this, other digestive insufficiencies like not making enough digestive enzymes, things like that. And so, stomach acid is so important because it helps us to break down and digest our food. And so, if we don't have enough of that, that can easily lead to digestive things like bloating or reflux. And another thing about stomach acid is that it's one of our major lines of defense against pathogens entering the digestive tract. So the stomach acid kills off some of those bad bacteria or other pathogens. And if we don't have enough stomach acid, then those are able to get further down in our digestive tract into our intestines where it can overgrow and cause more problems.
The interesting thing about that too is, as I'm sure you experience with your clients, most of them probably think they have too much acid, right? Because that's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much, if you think about the reflux medication commercials and what their doctors are probably telling them, like the treatment that is usually provided is literally to lower acid. So most people are like, I don't have too little acid. I have too much acid. So how might somebody know that their stomach acid is too low as opposed to too high, other than having reflux, which again, I think people might still be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So is there another way that you can demonstrate to them that they may have low stomach acid?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm so glad you pointed that out because you're right. People, especially with acid reflux, they feel this burning acid coming up, right? So they're like, I definitely have too much acid. And, with the PPIs, the medications they're taking too. And so some other symptoms of low stomach acid can be a feeling like your food's not digesting completely. So if you feel like your food is sitting in your stomach like a rock, or you feel really full, it takes a long time to feel like it goes through your system. That's another big sign. And then some other digestive symptoms too, like if you're dealing with bloating or abdominal pain, things like that can also point to the low stomach acid.
hmm Do you have a sense for like, not percentages, but maybe a split as far as how many people you work with that actually do have high stomach acid versus low? I mean, is it like 0% or high? Is it a small percentage? Like where do you find that landing?
I honestly feel like most of my clients end up having low stomach acid. It is the vast majority for sure.
Yeah, I doubt there's any research on that. I feel like all of these functional
Right.
medicine things like never get funded and everything, but I would be really curious to know if they actually did a study to see. I don't even know how they would measure that necessarily, but people who are literally producing too much acid, is that even a thing? Is it something? Because obviously, if you suppress acid production, you can help with the symptoms. Because if one of the symptoms is acid getting up into the esophagus, it's like, well, yeah, if you have less acid, maybe you won't feel that, but that doesn't mean that you're actually fixing the problem. And I'm sure, as you could explain, the problem's probably getting worse, right?
Yeah, it's definitely getting worse. And so when people are taking those acid lowering medications, it's like you said, it can help with the symptoms for a little bit, but then they will just keep needing higher doses of them to feel better as time goes on. And it's lowering their stomach acid more and more, which is making the symptoms worse. So it's really just a band-aid, right? Those medications are a band-aid. They can make you feel better for a little bit. But that's why getting to the root cause is so important so that you can actually feel better long term.
hmm And what could be some of the consequences if somebody is just because that's the other thing. I swear, some of this stuff is like shocking that it's still a thing in modern medicine. But I know, for example, like PPIs and other acid blockers are not approved for long term use, but they're still used long term. So if somebody's using either like it could be over the counter or prescription, if they're on these things that are blocking or reducing acid over time and constantly on them, what could be some of the consequences of that to their gut health?
Yeah. So it can cause a lot of issues. It can cause like dysbiosis or bacterial imbalances. So it can allow bad bacteria to overgrow and other pathogens and infections to get in there. It can also decrease the amounts of beneficial bacteria in the gut. And this can lead to all kinds of other issues too, like other digestive symptoms, but also other things, kind of like we talked about earlier, such as skin conditions or even anxiety or other mental health conditions, all kinds of things too. So,
hmm Yeah,
yeah.
again, still kind of shocked that that's a thing that people are allowed to just be on these PPIs and stuff for months and years and stuff, even though they were never approved for that kind of use. But pharmaceutical industry is not exactly the most above water type of industry necessarily. But I digress. I'll let you get back to the root causes. I can go off on tangents. So, what are some of the other root causes our audience should be aware of?
Yeah. So some other ones are, I just kind of mentioned it, but dysbiosis or bacterial imbalances in the gut. So having either too much detrimental or bad bacteria or too little beneficial bacteria, which can increase inflammation in the gut and throughout the body and make those symptoms worse. Another big one that I see is a gut infection called H. pylori. And H. pylori it can cause ulcers, It can even lead to cancer down the road if left unchecked for a long time. And it's also a really common cause of acid reflux and GERD. And so I see H. pylori in so many of my clients. And so for the dysbiosis and H. pylori, we can test for both of those on the GI map stool test that I use with a lot of my clients. And so a couple more of the root causes. Another one I see a lot is low mineral status. And so this would be especially minerals that also function as electrolytes, some common ones like sodium, potassium, magnesium. And these can lead to digestive insufficiencies that can cause or worsen gut symptoms. And a lot of these can be tied together too. So the low stomach acid can allow the bacterial overgrowth and can affect the mineral status as well. And then last but not least, for a root cause is stress. And this is one of the toughest ones to address and to overcome, because we all know we're all stressed out, and it's hard for a lot of people to admit that and do things to work on it. And something about stress is that it's not just the mental, emotional stress that we initially think of, like stress from work or a fight with a loved one or something like that. While those definitely contribute to stress, it's so many other things too that we might not think about, like lack of quality sleep or doing too many intense workouts, unresolved past traumas, negative self-talk, environmental toxins, and then your diet too. Like if you're eating an inflammatory diet or if you're not eating enough food regularly, and your body perceives all these stress inputs in the same way. So it secretes more cortisol, your stress hormone. It puts your body into fight or flight mode, that side of your nervous system. And yeah, I find that stress is an underlying cause for a lot of my clients. And it definitely was for me as well for a lot of my symptoms. It was something that I had to work on myself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from all of those different factors that you were mentioning, and I know you didn't even like cover every single thing that could cause stress. And it's like kind of shocking to think, how could anybody not be stressed in the society that we live in? Because it's just like our society is set up for that, to really create that, especially the last year and a half. It's like everything is like life or death lately. And I mean, in some cases, literally, but then also I think, if anyone watches the news, which I choose not to, but when I have watched it before, it's like they literally make you think the world is ending every single day. And so I just feel like all of these inputs on our mental state, our physical state, like you were saying, I used to work with a lot of people who would undereat and overtrain, and they just thought that was normal. They were like, oh, that's the way that like Women's Health Magazine says to work out, or that's how everybody at my CrossFit box does it. And so I just think there's this like general underlying expectation of like living a stressful lifestyle and being like normal with it, or just like, this is the way it is, nothing can change. And I know that can make it really hard, especially as a practitioner, to help people get results if they just assume their stress is just, that's it, right? Like there's nothing I can do about it. That's just the way life is. Not realizing that I think there's a lot of choices that we have. Obviously not always, like we don't choose trauma or we don't choose, a sick relative or something like that. But I think there's a lot of choices we do have control over that play so much into that stress, whether it's exposure to stress or perception of stress, which I know is like kind of two different things, but still kind of in the same category of stress.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely can be tough to address the stress piece with clients, and even with myself. I know it was challenging too, because it does with our society feel like stress can almost be a badge of honor sometimes. And I'm working hard, I'm doing so many things, getting everything done, and kind of forgetting to take care of yourself until your body reminds you, like, hey, listen to me, you have to slow down and take care of yourself. So
yeah, I know for me, anytime I'm like pretty low stress, there's this weird sense of guilt that comes up. It's like, wait, maybe I should be more stressed. And it's like, you have to basically just learn how to not listen to that. Cause I don't know if it's a female thing, type A person thing, business owner thing, lots of different inputs that possibly could be creating that. But it's like just that idea that the times that I'm not stressed, I feel guilty about it is, I mean, I don't give into that. It's not like I'm like got this negative self-talk, like you should be working, blah, blah. It's just that little inkling of like, ooh, this feels a little weird to not be doing stuff. But as an entrepreneur, I've kind of had to teach myself to not to not have that thought when it comes to downtime. So I can only imagine the people that that have more normal jobs. They're surrounded by people that all normalize it. It's like got to be so hard to kind of remove yourself from society almost, but not totally. Obviously, you don't have to go live out in the woods or something, but it's like you have to make such different decisions. And I think those decisions can be so hard for people when they feel like they don't have a choice about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been there too, in the same feeling that you're describing of like, ooh, should I be doing more when you're finally kind of in a calmer state? But yeah, it's definitely learning tools for working on that. And I think working on your mindset around it is so big too. Like mindset was a big part of my healing and for my clients too, getting that mindset of believing that you can heal, and just the way that you talk to yourself can have a big effect on that as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's also the fact that the digestive issues can affect mental health. So it's kind of this vicious cycle of like, I feel stressed, my digestion gets messed up, and then the digestive issues then create effects on how your brain functions. So can you speak a little bit to that? Because I know that you have expertise in that gut-brain connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a vicious cycle, and it can be tough to break out of it because digestive issues, like you were saying, they can cause mental health things such as anxiety and depression, and both because they increase stress levels and also because changes in your microbiome can affect the brain. So your microbiome is sending messages to your brain as well. And so that can increase the stress and anxiety too. So an interesting stat is that about 90% of your serotonin is actually produced in the gut. And serotonin, you guys have probably heard of it. It's like our good mood hormone. It stabilizes your mood and promotes feelings of happiness. And so a lot of that is actually produced in your gut. And if you have things out of whack in your gut microbiome, that can affect that serotonin production. So that's one way that we can see mental health issues like anxiety and depression as a result of issues with gut health. And then, of course, stress and anxiety can also make the digestive symptoms worse, keeping that cycle going. So we want to come at it from both sides, right? We can work on our brain and our mental health and also work on our gut health to help improve both. And so another way it's connected is that your enteric nervous system, which is also known as the second brain, that's located in your gut. And this enteric nervous system uses neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers, to communicate with your brain and other parts of your body. So it sends messages to your brain, just like your brain uses neurotransmitters to communicate with the whole body, including your gut. And so we want to work on shifting our body out of that sympathetic nervous state or fight or flight mode and switch it into rest and digest mode, the parasympathetic nervous system. And being in that more relaxed state calms down your stress, so the mental stress, and also can help improve digestion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned kind of taking the two-pronged approach, because I think a lot of times, especially when you're using more of the conventional medical model, it's like you're just looking at symptoms and you're just coming from one direction. So if somebody's got IBS, they're like, oh, here, take this, this drug that is going to help reduce, it's like an antispasmodic or something for your gut, which, okay, maybe that reduces the symptom, but maybe one of the reasons why they're having IBS is because of stress, and maybe they're having more stress because their anxiety is higher and they're reacting more strongly to the things that are happening to them. So it's like, and I think that's one of the beauties of functional medicine and people who learn functional medicine and apply it is because you're really looking at it from a holistic, like all the different angles, and you're not expecting one thing to fix everything, right? Even with a GI map test, it's like, yeah, if you have H. pylori and that's causing reflux, then healing that is going to be super important and you should definitely get that treated. But then if you're living this super high stress lifestyle or like, drinking a ton of alcohol or like, doing things that would negatively affect your gut health, doesn't matter if you treat the H. pylori, it's like still going to be a problem, right? So I think it's so important to have that multi-pronged approach. And that's why a good functional medicine provider, dietitian, that kind of thing can really help people see the full picture and not just think, oh, I just need to do this one thing to fix the symptom, because it's almost, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone with either digestive health issues, hormone health, like whatever we were working on. I don't think I've ever seen someone like, we fix one thing and now everything's great and there's no other factors that need to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes together. And like you were saying about the H. pylori, you can treat it. And I've had clients where, we do supplements for it. We do some diet and lifestyle changes for it. But if people aren't implementing those nutrition and lifestyle changes like continuously, keep doing it after we're done with the protocol, then I've definitely seen it come back. The symptoms come back. It happens again. You have to like really implement these lifestyle changes and make it part of your regular day-to-day life going forward for it to keep having lasting relief from it.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can somebody's food choices influence anxiety and other feelings of like poor stress resilience?
Yeah, there are quite a few ways. I'll go through a few of the big ones today. So one is blood sugar imbalances. So if your blood sugar is, kind of on a roller coaster up and down, not well managed, this can definitely lead to feelings of anxiety. One example that I use that probably most of the listeners have experienced is if you've ever had that hangry feeling, right? When you're super hungry, maybe you're a little shaky, got some brain fog, feeling starving, that is an example of having low blood sugar. And so think about how you feel in those moments. You probably feel stressed, you have anxiety. And so if you're allowing your body to get into that state, like very often, day in and day out, that puts a lot of stress on the body as well. And so these blood sugar imbalances can be caused by things like skipping meals, under eating, kind of chronically not eating enough calories throughout the day, and then also poorly balanced meals. So if people are just eating a lot of like simple carbs or sugar just by itself, that can definitely cause the blood sugar spikes and drops. Another one is caffeine. So I guess not technically a food, but this can increase cortisol, your stress hormone, and that leads to increased anxiety and stress. And I see this with a lot of clients where they might skip breakfast and just have coffee instead. And then a little later in the day, they're like, why am I feeling so anxious? And, we kind of address this and are like, oh, it might be the caffeine and the coffee and, not having that food before you have the caffeine can definitely cause that. Another one is when something is out of whack in the gut microbiome. So like an infection or bacterial imbalance, like we talked about before, that can affect that gut-brain axis and lead to more anxiety. And then another one would be like eating an inflammatory diet regularly. So eating a lot of ultra processed foods, a really high sugar diet, things like that can definitely increase anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you had mentioned minerals before. And I know we had Amanda Montalvo on the podcast a couple months ago, who's like, one of the mineral experts out there on the internet. And our mutual friend, Kaylee McDevitt, also talks about minerals a lot. I'm guessing she probably taught about minerals in the Leveraging Labs course. Do you see that being something that's affecting people's stress tolerance, is mineral imbalances?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. And that definitely impacts stress. And I've seen people, when clients start drinking like a mineral mocktail or adrenal cocktail, which is basically a beverage that includes sodium, potassium, vitamin C, and sometimes magnesium, that really soon after starting that, their stress or anxiety will improve. And another thing I see with those two, with adding those minerals back in, is energy levels getting a lot better. And I've seen it happen with quite a few clients where it can literally be after just a few days of adding that in that they're starting to notice like a huge difference, which is pretty awesome to see a change so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I mean, even just thinking about magnesium and how, first of all, stress depletes it and then caffeine depletes it too. And if you have clients who are literally just having coffee for breakfast, it's like, not only are they not getting magnesium in, but then it's like they're losing it faster. And I know that magnesium is one of those minerals that has a huge impact on stress levels and anxiety and all of that. So it's, gosh, sometimes I honestly forget how most people's like diets and lifestyles are. And it's shocking that we can even function as a society with people living this way. And I mean, our bodies are amazing, obviously. They put up with a lot and they deal with very, less than optimal circumstances. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show. And I think it's something where even in the entrepreneurial space, like a common conversation is around performance and energy and like being maximally productive and, being able to make the most out of your time spent working. And it's something where, at least outside of the nutrition space, obviously a lot of my clients are nutrition entrepreneurs, so they're not necessarily as oblivious to it as the average entrepreneur is. But I think there's so many people who are not in the health space that are like eating and living in a way that is depleting minerals, is lowering their stomach acid, is creating inflammation and that kind of thing. And I just wonder, like, obviously the general population is probably dealing with this a lot, but even like entrepreneurs who do have a lot of, they spend a lot of money and time in personal development and taking care of themselves, and they see themselves as being their best investment. But then you think about some of the choices that they might be making in their health that isn't supporting good mental function, good energy, good digestive function, all of that. And I don't know, I'd be really curious to see how rampant that is in the just overall entrepreneurial space, because I do see a lot of people that I interact with outside of the nutrition field that, again, they're having like a lot of caffeine, they're staying up really late, they aren't eating. Because, I mean, it's really easy to go hours without eating. Like, I even get into that trouble sometimes. I'll forget to eat, and it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in like 6 hours, and all of a sudden I'm starving because I get off the computer. And so it's one of these things where I hope our listeners are doing a little bit of an audit on their own habits, not to be like a shame-based audit, but just like an awareness-based audit to ask yourself, like, do you think that you're really taking care of your body in a way that could actually allow you to perform at your best, which is super important, especially if you're your own business owner. Like, a lot of it's relying on you performing. So just, again, I've gone on a lot of tangents today, but it's just something I was thinking about, because it's like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I forget how the average person is living, because, when you're in this world, it's like you almost can't act the same way as the average person, because it's like you just know too much and you know how harmful it is. And maybe you've overcome your own issues and you're like, I can never go back there. And it's shocking to imagine how many people are just living this way and have no idea what kind of problems it's causing for them.
Totally. And I'm with you that I forget that a lot too, because I think that, like you said, knowing so much about it, that my own diet and lifestyle and the different things that I do that have become pretty automatic to me. And I sort of assume like, oh yeah, of course everyone knows like to eat vegetables or to not skip meals or not have coffee on an empty stomach, whatever it is. But it's like, oh no, they don't. And sometimes I'll get a client who's still maybe eating a bunch of fast food or skipping a ton of meals or something like that. And I'm reminded that it's not second nature to everyone. And so we still have plenty of work to do to help people get to that place of supporting their health.
Yeah. And that reminds me of that whole concept of the imposter syndrome, which you had mentioned before. Like, I think a lot of dietitians, especially in the functional space, like, they question, oh, do I know enough to really help somebody? Like, because especially when you're exposed to people who are just like Like I remember working for Chris Kresser and just being like, there's literally no way I'll ever be like that. Like he is just, this brain is like not normal. And like Chris Masterjohn and these people who I'm just like, you're literally not human. You have to have some kind of like computer in there or something to know all this stuff. And so I think it's really easy to start comparing yourself to people who just seem way smarter. And we forget what we know, and we forget the things that come easily to us and come naturally to us because either we've been studying it for long enough, or for whatever reason, it's just not something we really have to think about anymore. And I think it's really, it's helpful to realize that the vast majority of people that we work with do not know what we know in most cases. And they maybe they know even half of what we know, but they still don't know everything that we know. And I do think it's really important for anyone who's a nutrition entrepreneur or even a nutritionist in a normal clinical job to just recognize the stuff that we do know that is more than what the average person knows, and the stuff that sounds really basic to us, but can make such a huge difference. Like I know, in our Nutrition Business Accelerator program, a lot of people have blood sugar as being like a big pillar of what they help people with, because it's one of those things that like makes such a huge impact on people, but most people aren't doing it. And it seems really obvious to us. Like, of course, blood sugar matters. And of course, you want to get protein at your meals and that kind of thing. But it's like just something as simple as that can totally transform a person's health. I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit for the stuff we know that can make a huge impact, even though it sounds so basic to us because we've been studying it for so long.
Yep, definitely. And I think blood sugar is a great example because lots of times when, if I talk about it on Instagram or with clients or whatever, at first I think, oh, well, of course they know this. This is like 101 basic stuff, but most people don't, right? Of course, as dietitians, like that's something that we all understand and we know the importance of, but yeah, we still have to share it with other people.
Yeah. And I just think about when I'm not eating to control blood sugar, like if I eat something that either accidentally wasn't what I thought it was, or, for whatever reason, if I'm in a position where I can't eat a balanced meal, it's like the level of badness I feel when I am like, my blood sugar is crazy. It's like, man, I can't imagine just this being every single day and having no idea that the food choices, and really not complex food choices, that could be helpful. It's why we all have to just keep talking about it, because it's like, it isn't common knowledge. It's not something that our society is just like, oh yeah, obviously, right? And so I do think that it's going to be a long time before that's something that people just know, unfortunately. But I know all of our listeners are probably aware of it because they're the kind of people that are studying this stuff, reading this stuff. But, still, even if you're understanding it, that doesn't always mean you apply it. I mean, I definitely don't always apply it, and I know it very well. So sometimes knowledge is not enough. You need actual like behavior change and intentional choices.
Same. Yeah. Even for me, it's something that still, has to be intentional to make sure I'm eating those balanced meals all the time. And it takes effort to do, but it's worth it because I always feel better when I do it.
Yeah. Our food environment definitely does not make it easy in a lot of cases. It's like, no. I've been in the airport a lot recently, and I'm just like, man, just like, I have to go to like Five Guys to get a burger if I want to get some protein or something. It's just, and I'm not like, people can eat fast food if they want. I'm not going to like poo-poo that if you need to eat it, but it's like, I wish it wasn't the situation where you have to choose between like, oh, I want to get the quote unquote healthier thing, but it's just like a bunch of plants, versus I know I need some protein and some fat. So I'm going to actually go to like the fast food place, because if I don't, I'm going to feel like garbage. And it doesn't matter if the meal was like super nutrient dense. It's like, if it doesn't have protein, I'm not going to feel good. So I think sometimes that can be confusing for people too, because they're like, looking at something that looks healthy, but it's like 300 calories and mostly fiber, right? It's like, that's not necessarily going to make you feel good the way that something a little bit more substantial would. So, but I used to do a lot of stuff with like under eating, like inadequate calorie intake and stuff. So this is just my little soapbox coming back because I haven't talked about it in a while. So.
No, but I think even with digestive issues that I work with so many people on, under eating is a big thing that I see in a lot of clients too, and something that we have to work on. And, like we talked about a little bit before, under eating can be one of the underlying causes of digestive issues. So it all ties together for sure.
Yeah. And on that kind of side note, I was just thinking I had written an article a few years ago about how too many vegetables can affect gut health. And that's another thing too, right? Like things that people think are healthy, which again, it's not like vegetables aren't healthy, but do you ever get people that come to you that are just eating like an insane amount of vegetables and that's what's triggering their gut issues?
So I do sometimes have clients that, especially if they're eating a lot of raw vegetables, that can be making their digestive issues worse. Lots of times bloating is a big one with that. So if people are like, trying to eat healthy and maybe they are eating a big salad for lunch and dinner every day and don't understand why they're not feeling better. And we have to work on, not that, like you said, vegetables are healthy. I want people to eat vegetables, but it's got to have that balance with the protein and the fat with that fiber too. And so we will work on, one thing is that doing cooked vegetables instead of raw can be helpful for people with those digestive issues. And then also just working on balancing things. And lots of times if they're doing something like just eating salads for lunch and dinner every day, they're not getting enough calories. Like there's no way. And so they're under eating and their body isn't being properly nourished. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it can definitely, I know I keep sending us down rabbit holes, but gut health is one of these things that can just like spider web out into so many different things. Cause even I just thought of how, and I used to work with a lot of people who had more of that like orthorexic tendency. So they were like, they would eat a pound of broccoli at a meal. Actually, I don't even know what a pound of broccoli is, but like, a massive plate of broccoli at a meal thinking that was healthy because it's broccoli, right? And that would be triggering gut issues. And then another thing would be the ones who were on a really low carb diet thinking that was healthy. And then they, that low carb, low glucose availability would potentially affect their thyroid. And as we know, your thyroid can affect very much your gut symptoms and can cause constipation and that kind of thing. So it is kind of nuts, like when you know how all of these things connect, like all of the different choices that can affect a person's health and can be triggering that from a root cause perspective. And ultimately and I feel like you're on the same page here, my philosophy is that a lot of times eating a more like culturally appropriate, like kind of more what maybe our grandparents would have been eating or our great grandparents if you're a little bit younger, like that kind of food a lot of times is what actually ends up being the right fit for people as opposed to like these super extreme, like, raw vegan diet or like paleo, low carb, like that kind of stuff that people think is healthy because it's like popular, but it's actually throwing their body off more because of the extremeness of it. So yeah, maybe it's better than eating Krispy Kreme donuts and Big Macs every day, but like maybe not. Also, it could actually be causing more of a problem if you go way too extreme on one of these so-called like health diets. So you might not see as much of that as I did. I kind of got a reputation for working with people that were dealing with orthorexia type behavior, but it is something that, I want to remind our listeners that like a healthy diet isn't necessarily the one that's like the most Instagram worthy or the one that like the latest diet book is recommending.
Totally. Yeah. I think I definitely see a lot of people who are very into low carb diets or maybe keto or something like that. And I think any kind of extreme diet is not the way to go. Sometimes, yes, elimination diets can be helpful only temporarily to help with symptoms, but I definitely try to, with clients, focus more on getting back to basics. So like you were saying, what, our grandparents or great grandparents were eating, focusing on eating more just real whole foods and balancing that plate with, the different protein, vegetables, and starch, like not being afraid of carbs because our bodies need them. They're so important for your gut health and, the fiber and prebiotics for feeding those good gut bugs. So it's important to make sure you're getting some of all of that in your diet.
Definitely. Well, Rachel, I appreciate you reeling me in on all my little like tangents today. I feel like every time you would say something, I was like, oh, that just popped up an idea. And then it would just go off on this little tangent. So I appreciate you being a gracious podcast interviewee to handle that. And I know that you have a free 14-day gut reset that people can take advantage of if they want to do something proactive about their gut health. So can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a 14-day challenge in email, and you can sign up and start, whenever you are ready. So what it does is it walks you through some of my favorite gut health habits that I have seen make the most impact with my clients. So you'll sign up and you will get those 5 different habits. And then throughout the 14 days, you will implement them, and I'll, be there in your inbox to support you, hold you accountable to sticking with them. And yeah, it's a great, fun challenge and good way to dip your toes into working on your gut health.
Awesome. Well, we will link to that in the show notes. And if people want to connect with you outside of this conversation and they want to possibly work with you or just get to follow along with what you're teaching, because I know you have an active Instagram account, where can they find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, my handle is at happygut.nutritionist. And then from there, you can also check out my website, apply to be an individual client or for one of my group coaching programs. And yeah.
Awesome. And remind me, the group coaching program that you have, who is that for?
That is for people who are struggling with digestive issues like acid reflux and bloating, or bowel changes like constipation or diarrhea. And so we work through different nutrition and lifestyle changes you can make. And it is in a nice community to get to connect with other people. And we also will do the GI map stool test in there to help us figure out your root cause and address that.
Awesome. Yeah, I do think the testing thing is a really important element for so many people. And I know that including that in a group program is not always the easiest thing to do, but it sounds like you figured it out and it's working for your clients. And I just love the opportunity to get the personalization, because I think like with gut stuff, especially, there can be quote unquote good practices that maybe aren't right for somebody because they have something going on in their gut that they really need attention on. And so that's really great that you include the GI map test so that you can actually help people customize things.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on the show and hanging out with us. And thanks to those of you listening for spending the last 45 minutes with us. We will get you guys Rachel's links if you want to check out her Instagram, her website, and get that free 14-day gut reset and get a little kickstart on your gut health. So we'll look forward to seeing you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura Schoenfeld here again. As you probably know, my greatest mission as a business coach and mentor is to help nutrition entrepreneurs create a purpose-filled and profitable business that nourishes both them and their clients. As a business coach with years of experience running a multiple 6-figure online nutrition business, in 2019, I started sharing my experience helping hundreds of clients achieve their health goals through one-on-one services, group coaching programs, and online courses to mentor other dietitians and nutritionists to help them do the same in their business. And in 2020, I officially closed the doors to my highly successful online nutrition business in order to focus exclusively on serving other nutrition entrepreneurs who want to grow their business faster than ever without having to sacrifice the things that matter to them, like their relationships and their health. This has been the next evolution in my mission to help make the world a healthier place, particularly for ambitious women who want to do big things in the world while still experiencing vibrant health. To date, our company has helped over 200 nutrition entrepreneurs from all over the world start, grow, and scale their nutrition businesses to 6 figures and even multiple 6 figures inside of our Nutrition Business Accelerator program and our high-level mastermind. It's been so incredible to watch the growth that's happened for these entrepreneurs inside of our coaching programs that have been designed exclusively for nutrition and dietitian business owners. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that applications are now open for our 2022 Nutrition CEO Mastermind. This one-of-a-kind mastermind is a carefully curated space for you to experience joyful and profitable business growth while being surrounded and supported by other driven nutritionists on the same exciting and challenging journey of entrepreneurship. When you join our year-long mastermind, you'll create relationships that will last a lifetime and achieve results in your business that you maybe have never even imagined for yourself. If you want to learn more about this opportunity to be a part of the 2022 Nutrition CEO Mastermind, go to lauraschoenfeld.com/mastermind. On that page, you'll find everything you need to know about what the mastermind includes, who it's for, and how to apply for your spot. Spots are limited, so don't wait to get your application in. Go to lauraschoenfeld.com/mastermind to send in your application, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.